Welcome back to Morning Joe. With us now, Democratic Representative from Virginia, Congressman Tom Perriello. Congressman, thanks for being on the show. Good morning.
Good morning to you.
Well, Congressman, are you supportive of the Baucus plan as you've seen it coming out in the Senate?
Well, you know, I've been a no on health care reform trying to get to yes. We know how much the status quo is bankrupting our families, our businesses, the deficit. What I've seen of the Baucus plan doesn't seem to get at the core issue of the kind of competition and cost containment that's going to really relieve that premium pressure for middle-class families. But I think what we are seeing is a deadly seriousness here about trying to solve the problem, putting the best ideas on the table, and really anyone from any party who's serious about bringing ideas to the table has a seat, and that's the right way for it to go forward.
So let's talk about a couple of issues, Congressman. The first issue Jay Rockefeller brought up, and actually Lawrence O'Donnell brought up first on our show on Monday, and that is this 35% surcharge tax. Would you support that for Americans, middle-class Americans, as Jay Rockefeller said, that have a good health care plan?
I would not. I think that plan is probably DOA in the House, though I'm not as authoritative on that as some others are. I don't think it's the right approach. I think looking at where we can find savings, cuts in federal spending, these are good ways to go about it, ways we can retain costs. You know, the CBO has said some of the best cost savers are not in the Baucus plan, so I think we've got some good ideas on the table, though, and we're moving forward.
All right, Congressman, let's move to another plan that's in the Baucus bill, and that's another one that's been criticized by Democrats in the Senate. Bill Nelson from Florida says he can't go along with the cuts in Medicare Advantage. Could you?
I think those proposals raise a lot of concern on the House side. I think the Democrats...
What about with you personally?
Well, I've got to look at the details of the Baucus plan, but if it's cuts in Medicare Advantage, then that's of serious concern to me. There's certainly been some waste in that program, but I think overall it's moving in a direction that's important for seniors, and ours is the party that's tended to look out very strongly with Medicare and Social Security and other things for guaranteeing that security to our seniors.
Very good. Pat Buchanan's in Washington also. He's got a question. Pat.
Yeah, Congressman, I want to ask you a political question. We just heard from Chuck Todd and from David Gregory that they think that this so-called, you know, the option of going with reconciliation is basically a bluff. In other words, the Democrats and the president are going to go for 60 Democrats or 60 votes in the committee and on the floor. To do that, you've got to have Jay Rockefeller aboard, which suggests that Jay Rockefeller, when he says, if we don't have a public option, I'm not for it, that he is bluffing or he's going to cave in. Do you believe that?
Well, I've been on a steep learning curve here in my first 8 months, but learning what makes the Senate tick is certainly not one of the things I've solved yet. But I do think that generally speaking up here, you know, 50 votes, 51 votes is what it's supposed to be to pass a bill. And in extreme cases, a filibuster can be used. But, you know, I'm going to leave that to the Senate to figure out. But they, I think, are very serious about trying to get this thing done. And that's a promise we made to the American people.
Congressman, there have been heightened emotions on both sides of this debate on a number of levels. But what do you think of Nancy Pelosi's recent comments about the concern that this could bring us back to another time where things were very violent and that this could go in a bad direction, the discourse?
Well, you know, making the comment or not making the comment doesn't change the reality that clearly this is part of what's going on, but not all of what's going on. I conducted over 100 hours of town hall meetings in my district in central and southern Virginia, and the vast majority of them were civil. People disagreed passionately on ideological grounds, and there were the rare cases where very racist remarks were made. Sometimes they were called out by neighbors in the audience, sometimes they weren't. Clearly race remains a factor in America, but there's also a lot of disagreement here that is genuine and not based on race. So I think we have to have both conversations. But I think what you also saw was a shift between sort of a debate from the 60s about compassionate liberalism versus anti-government conservatism being replaced by the post-boomer debate, which is the problem solvers versus the political partisans. And I think that's the new line in Washington, is not really Republicans and Democrats, but the division between the people who came here to get this thing done, to solve these problems that are handicapping the American people, and instead go forward with solving the problem.
Congressman Perriello, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you.
We'll see you soon. Up next, editor of the New York Times Book Review and Week in Review, Sam Ten in the house. We'll see what he's got on tap this weekend.
By the way, that congressman, very impressive guy.
Yeah.
We've had him on a couple times. I think he's got a future in Virginia politics.
Yeah,
It's a big
he
future.
just might.